Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game. So today we're going to continue the series on the MiSter FPGA DE10 Nano project, and I decided we're going to have some fun today because all the talk of the MiSter FPGA handheld from Taki Udon and his company is coming fast and furious. And while we will eventually have a MiSter FPGA in a handheld form factor, I actually wanted to talk about Game Boy Advance games that I think are just better on the couch on a large television. This is just a different type of topic video, so if you guys enjoy it, maybe you'll see more. Leave me a comment down below and tell me what you think. But honestly, I love Game Boy Advance. I've had a collection for it for a very long time and have more than one GBA, including screen modded ones. But there's something to be said for playing these games on the couch. Something like The Legend of Zelda: The Minish Cap here just looks so much better on a 65-inch OLED 4K than it does on any sort of handheld form factor. And I think a lot of people miss some of the handheld cores when it comes to actually playing these games on your MiSter FPGA, because you do remember these as being handhelds, but honestly this gives so much more life and new life to the games that you probably played back in the day and remembered. And I do remember playing the Minish Cap back when it did come out. I absolutely loved it, but I've never really revisited it because I don't have as much time in transit anymore. I work from home primarily, so being able to play some Game Boy Advance games on the core on my couch just 100% does it for me. The overall screen clarity, that HDMI out, all of the color reproduction here just looks incredible, and that's just down to how good the GBA core is. And that's kind of where the topic of the video came from. Best games I think you should play from your couch. A big thanks to Andy D for helping with this one. It's also a best games that Andy D thinks you should play from your couch. And again, the Minish Cap here is such a fun Zelda game. There's so many great entries in the franchise, but this one particularly to me was one of my favorites. And again, if I tried to play on a handheld today, it's technically a ton of fun, but it's one of those things I just prefer the large screen. There's so much detail in the Game Boy Advance graphics, and even on a modded screen, the size of it definitely hides a little bit of just how impressive the title truly is. But when you do something like play it on MiSter FPGA from your couch on your television, you get such a better image in my opinion. And there's something about the actual screen space resolution of the GBA as well. The aspect ratio really does lend itself to being on something like a 16:9 television, because you're pretty close to 16:9 in its overall presentation. Just a couple black bars on the left and on the right, but you're pretty close to fully filling the screen. And all of the shading here, all of the shadow, all of the pixel art and sprites look absolutely incredible via capture and look just as good on a television as well. So there's so much fun to be had on GBA when you actually get to play the game on a big screen. Leave me a comment down below and tell me what's your favorite Game Boy Advance game as far as the graphics are concerned. I would be very curious to hear that. As we kind of navigate around the world again, all of the bright, vibrant Nintendo colors, the greens, the golds of the Triforce there, everything including the animations just pop so well. And when you do play these games on a couch on a big screen, you're just going to see a lot more of fine detail that was there back in the day, but maybe you missed because the last time you played these games was actually on a traditional GBA handheld screen. Because while they weren't the worst things in the world, screen technology has definitely improved a ton, just giving you a better look at some of your favorite games. And these are the type of games too, they do take a long time to complete, and maybe when you first played them you had those long train rides, you had periods in between college classics like I did where I'd have 2 hours of downtime to kill, but now I just don't really have that. What I do have is couch time, and while that MiSter FPGA handheld is coming, it'll be so much fun to play games like this on that. Don't dismiss the handheld cores when it comes to just chilling out on the couch and having fun. And the best thing with MiSter FPGA 2 is getting those two-player experiences in is going to be a lot easier because we have the two-player core and so many other ways to basically interact with a second player that are much harder to do than if you'd actually used real traditional hardware. Now moving on to the next game that I can't recommend enough that you check out on the Game Boy Advance, it's going to be TMNT, or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. That's the only title the game has, and there's a ton of awesome TMNT beat 'em ups out there, but for some reason this one doesn't seem to get mentioned near as much. It reviewed well when it came out, and it is a metric crap ton of fun, but it just seems to fall by the wayside, which is an absolute bummer. And I think this is another one that just looks so much better when it's on a large TV or via capture. That New York poster on the wall, the sidewalk close sign there, all of the pixels, all of the detail, all of the shading just come across so well when you get this thing up to 50, 60, 70 inches on your TV. And you also get some incredible audio, and it's something to beat the hell out of the original GBA speaker. So go ahead and listen for 45 seconds and I'll be back with more games to show you. Sounds awesome via direct capture. It's going to sound just as good coming out of whatever sound system you use, because even though the Game Boy and Game Boy SP had decent headphone quality, the built-in speakers is hollow, thin, and tinny, and it's just never been anything that I've loved to listen to. And again, if you want to play 2 players in any of these games, you have options. If the game allows for any sort of link cable capabilities, you have that GBA 2-player core where you can have 2 screens on screen at once with 2 different instances of the core actually running, which is just absolutely such a fun party trick and wild to see on MiSter FPGA or even software emulation. And that's why this is fun just to talk about as a video, because you guys have been asking me for more best X games to play on Y core, which is basically best games to play on whatever core. So if you guys like this one and you watch it, I may do another one, so recommend some consoles you'd love to see down below. Game Boy Advance just figured like it was a fun place to start, because I just always want to hear more people talking about handheld cores, and I don't hear it that much. But weirdly enough, on the Analog Pocket side of things, I get a lot of questions about different handheld cores, and I think that's just because people assume Game Boy Advance should be in a handheld and you should play it that way. But there's so many amazing games that look just so much better when you actually get them on a larger screen, and TMNT is one of them. If you've never played this game before, it's every bit as good as other beat-em-ups in the same franchise, so definitely check it out. And if you have played it, let me know what you think down below, because it is so weird. I never hear about this game, and I'm really surprised it doesn't show up on more best Game Boy Advance games of all time lists. Now moving over to an honorable mention that looks better on a big screen TV and is also just an impressive port from Dreamcast is Jet Set Radio or Jet Grind Radio, depending on where you live. This is definitely obviously not as good as the Dreamcast original, but it's never supposed to be as good. It's supposed to take the entire concept of that game, translate it over to the Game Boy Advance, and it does it in that isometric viewpoint. The animations are incredible, the game really does play so well for a Game Boy Advance title, and again, it's a lot easier to understand and play when you have a little bit more image. Or maybe we're just all getting old and our eyes aren't as good. That isn't true. I just went to the DMV and I'm able to read the bottom line with no glasses whatsoever. I just like seeing sometimes the graphics blown up on a big television, and the colors here really do pop, especially if you have an OLED screen. But I am curious as well, what type of TVs are you guys using at home? Tell me down below. I just recently upgraded my living room setup to the LG C4 OLED, and it makes MiSter FPGA and everything else I put on it look that much better. So if you are thinking about a new TV soon, I can't recommend OLED enough for your gaming. It really does make everything just so much more vibrant. It really is a night and day difference when you're actually able to see an OLED in front of you versus just a standard LCD panel. But if you're not ready for a TV upgrade yet, maybe just walk up to your television, tip it over and break it and tell anyone in the house, well, now we have to get one because it's broken. Nobody do that, but it does sound fun as a joke. Now moving on to a technical masterpiece showcase, seeing Street Fighter Alpha 3 run on the Game Boy Advance is nothing short of a miracle, and this is an absolutely outstanding port. And I totally understand we have this game on the arcade side of things. There's better technical ways to play it. But when I talk about just how impressive the Game Boy Advance was, especially when you have it on MiSter FPGA, a game like this absolutely comes to mind. The fact that this game could fit, let alone function on the Game Boy Advance, is just a technical showcase of how good the developers were. And people much smarter than me have basically picked apart the compression algorithm and how this game actually fit onto a Game Boy Advance cart and functioned on this system. And it just is another fun way to play what I would consider to be one of the best Street Fighter games ever made. Honestly, I'm a much bigger Alpha fan than I am Street Fighter 3. Not saying Street Fighter 3 isn't good, so don't leave those angry comments down below. Just saying Alpha's always done it for me. All the parallax scrolling here, all of the animation, all of the frames, all of the characters came over relatively intact to the Game Boy Advance, and again, it's a fun game to play on the couch. And if you are a fighting game fan and you want to try something that's innately similar yet completely different than what you remember, Street Fighter Alpha 3 on Game Boy Advance is just an awesome way to take a look at this game, because while technically the Game Boy Advance is probably more powerful on paper than the Capcom CPS2, in reality getting this game to function was just a wild time. And something like WarioWare, the definitive portable game, pretty much every single level takes about 10 seconds, just has so much more charm, so much more colorful, and so much more poppy nature when you put it onto MiSter FPGA and an LCD television. So don't think games that are just specifically designed for that pure handheld experience cannot be fun on a TV sitting on your couch. Especially if you have friends over for a game night, load this up on the core, pass the controller back and forth. I can assure you this is every bit as fun as something like Mario Party or Mario Kart, except it is designed for that portable experience. The graphics, the absurd Wario nature of it all, it just absolutely is such a fun game, and all of the artwork and all of the peculiarities of the game just look better on a television in my opinion. But you leave me a comment down below and you tell me, are you buying this whole couch gaming GBA thing, or do you not like the idea of playing on your couch? Because I know some people really do like to keep handhelds just to the handheld form factor and do not play any of them on MiSter FPGA. But trust me, you could do a lot worse than WarioWare. The game is not only insanely fun, it really is just great for a game night when you're hanging out on the couch. And that's kind of why I decided to do this video. You guys have been asking for best games on cores, and I figured I'd try to start it off a little bit differently with the help of Andy D, so big thanks to him again. And if you have been playing some Game Boy Advance games, tell me down below what the last game you played is. What's the one game you would recommend on Game Boy Advance that maybe you don't think I've ever played? Because I played a ton of them, but it is a massive library, and a lot of times you guys introduce me to games that I've heard of, but I've never had anyone recommend to actually play, and sometimes I do find some of my new favorite games for that month based upon your recommendations alone. And again, if you like these sort of best games to play on cores videos, maybe you'll see another one, you just need to watch it. But short of that, we are done. Go plug in your MiSter FPGA, play some Game Boy Advance, get that ass on the couch, and enjoy yourself. Otherwise, we are done, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.